Rich?
Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you all for having me, first off, and thank you for all the work that the Environmental Council and the Audubon Society do on the North Fork. They're very important, and so I appreciate that, and I appreciate you having me. So sustainability is another program and another philosophy in agriculture. Now, we started this program in 2012 as a way to really define and validate what sustainability means. The term sustainability and sustainable it was being used quite a bit, and with really no definition, no validation, no way to find out if it's real or not. And so a bunch of us got together in the industry and decided that we wanted to make this really legit and give it some teeth and codify what it actually means. And so that's what the group is. This region was started in 1973. A lot of people know some of the history. The Sustainable Group today has 23 companies, some vineyards and winery together, and over 1,200 acres under the certification program. Water is so important, and so the first few slides, with the advent of drone use, we can actually get some great views of how close we really are to the bodies of water that surround us, and they are key to enabling us to do what we do and to grow the type of grapes that we grow here. Long Island has developed their district around the ability of this region to grow European grape varieties. The wine market in the US and basically the entire world is centered around European varieties of wine. And the wine market itself is very varietally focused. People want a certain variety in the bottle that they're looking for. And so it's critical that we are where we are. The Long Island Sound, which you can see here, is in some spots close to 300 feet deep. It stays quite moderate throughout the course of the year. It'll get up to 70 degrees at the warmest part of the summer, and won't really drop much below 38, 36 degrees in the dead of winter. So, and Peconic Bay is not as deep, 80 feet in some of the deeper spots, but it does the same thing. So as weather goes from west to east, which the weather patterns typically do, they're passing over water before they hit the North Fork. And so in the summer, it's going to be cooler. The water is cooler than the air temperature. And so it's going to be much cooler than New York City, for example, or any other spot on mainland parts of the US. Even Western Long Island, we are cooler than. And in the winter, we stay a little bit warmer, because even though you might have a Arctic mass coming down from the northwest that could bring single-digit type weather or 0 degrees, the water, 36 degrees, is going to make it that much warmer. So even though it still feels cold and windy, those vines are protected. So the water is completely integral to what we're doing. The soils also play a major role, because we are the beneficiary of essentially the glaciers scraping off much of the topsoil of New England and leaving it right where we are. So they're very well drained. We have a beautiful loamy topsoil that overlies gravelly sand, so extremely well drained. And so we're a temperate region. We have 4 seasons, we have humidity, we get rainfall. And because of the soil, the rain percolates through the soil very, very quickly. And vines don't like to be very wet. They don't like wet feet, as the saying goes. So we really have a perfect confluence of events on the North Fork to allow us to grow these beautiful European varieties. This is another shot of Long Island Sound. And this is Peconic Bay and Richmond Creek coming into our vineyard in Southold. We have 3 separate sites at Bedell. So Long Island wine in 2020, it's about 1.2 million gallons of wine are produced. Of course, visitors are important to our business. We do sell a lot of wine outside of the area to restaurants, and we go as far as different parts of the country, but the majority of our wine is sold locally and out the door, which is a more sustainable model, especially economically for these companies. So what is sustainability? The World Commission on Environment and Development in 1987 really coined the definition when they stated sustainability is meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And this is essentially it. And so sustainability really encompasses a lot of organic practices and philosophy, a lot of biodynamic practices and philosophy. But in addition to that, we are also concerned about social equity, and frankly, economics plays a role as well. We can go to the next slide. This is the classic model showing what sustainability encompasses. Economically viable are the practices that we want to do. Do they make sense economically, both for the grower and for the community? Socially responsible and environmentally sound. And where they meet and come together is where we typically find sustainability and the definition of sustainability. To put it more simply, it's about not fouling our own nest. This is a locally defined strategy, and it's not a point where we get to where we can say we're sustainable, we're done, hooray for us. Doesn't work that way. It's not that simple. It's an evolving system. And the more we learn, the more information we can gather. We do use as much scientific research that's applicable to what we're doing as possible. We combine the best practices of organic, biodynamic, and traditional agriculture as well. Some examples of that would be integrated pest management, which is an organic concept, really looking at what insects are there and what diseases are present before applying a material to control them. So we're not doing things in excess and not doing things for no reason. And it's also economically sound because that can be an expensive practice. From a biodynamic standpoint, we practice a holistic view of composting so that every company that is producing grapes and pressing them at a winery, there is a tremendous amount of pumice that remains, the skins, the seeds, the stems that are left over from wine production. That has to go back into the same vineyard that it comes from. And so everybody in the program has an active and vibrant composting program. And for traditional agriculture, there are methods like bird control, which will use netting. These are practices that we've actually figured out locally here that work the best. Many, many years ago, there were chemical controls for birds that were practiced throughout the country. And it's really not something we want to do anymore. And so the fact that we can control the damage that birds do simply through nets and deter them from damaging the crop is a key component to us being able to do what we do. We try to focus on low toxic materials and especially groundwater. When the group was put together, we spent a lot of time looking at what we do. And as Ira I think, said very well, what we do on the surface of the ground affects what's going on below the ground. And sole source aquifer is what we are on top of. It's our only source of drinking water. And so we work with Suffolk County Water Authority, and we work with the Suffolk County Investigative Water Services. We have a well testing program in vineyards on the North Fork. And we continue that program with Suffolk County. And we try to have a prohibition on leaching chemicals and limits on nitrogen. Nitrogen in particular is and nitrogen leaching is a big problem on Long Island, and nitrates in our aquifer and in the surrounding waters can affect fish and wildlife and shellfish. And so it was really important to us to look at this program from that perspective. And certain chemicals have been found in Long Island groundwater for many, many years. Many of them are known as legacy materials. These are from traditional conventional farming that has taken place over the last 50, 70, 80 years. But some of the chemicals that are found are more modern, and we've prohibited those for use in vineyards. And we have limitations on nitrogen. Less so about what form of nitrogen. We do allow, traditional kind of conventional nitrogen applications if that's what the grower wants. But the main point is that we limit the amount because it doesn't matter if it's from manure or a bag of fertilizer. Nitrogen can be over applied and can leach and cause damage. And so we look at a 40 pound per acre maximum usage for nitrogen in the program. So we have a certification component of our program, and we're as Debbie mentioned, we're the only program on the East Coast that has an annual inspection component and a certification system attached to it. We have over 200 specific practices that are involved and have to be completed for the annual inspection. We encourage the reduction of pesticide use and nitrogen inputs, as I mentioned, and more than 50% of what is used to control insects and diseases have to be organic or low impact materials. So we're not quite as rigid as the organic program or the biodynamic program. The grape industry in itself is complicated. The varieties that we're growing are tender and finicky and extremely susceptible to disease within this region. They didn't grow up here, they didn't evolve here, they were brought here. And so the organic program in California, which is where it was developed, doesn't really apply as well to what we're doing here. Grape growing and winemaking is a very local craft. What we're doing here tastes much different than what is done on the West Coast, for example. So this program was really developed to help people move toward reduction of off-farm inputs and get them on the pathway to being more eco-friendly. We're conserving topsoil and reducing erosion. We have to have, everybody in the program needs to have a permanent cover crop between the vines. When I started in the industry 35 years ago, it was common to see vineyards clean cultivated with bare soil in between the rows. And that created a lot of runoff. It created erosion. It creates nitrogen runoff. And so having permanent cover between the rows is a huge factor in conservation of topsoil and protecting water quality. We also want to strengthen relations with employees and our local community. A big part of the program is working with our people, our workers, having a solid job description for all the tasks and all the people that are part of the wine industry, fair hiring practices, fair wage, a living wage, having a solid HR component in your company. so that people know what is what with how the company operates. Is there healthcare available? What are the benefits? What are clear working conditions going to be like? And we've worked with a number of other people, a number of other organizations to help this along. We partner with Cornell University Family Health and Wellness. We also work with Hudson River Healthcare and have been involved with a program that they have provided free healthcare to farm workers through a mobile unit that we've had a number of events to help support. And we can move on to the next one.
Yeah, we hope.
We hope. Here we go. So why are we doing this? Why certification? Again, as I mentioned earlier, it validates the claims of sustainability. Much like the organic program decades ago, when the term organic was being used, there wasn't a program in place until the 90s that really defined what what the word means. We wanted to define this for ourselves. And so we have that program in place, as I mentioned, 200 practices. It demands accountability as well. An inspector is coming by that we have a good relationship with that works independently, and he arranges vineyard visits to meet with vineyard managers and farm workers to see if they are following the guidelines. It's also a proactive response to local and regional concerns. And obviously, we're all concerned about the delicate nature of the ecosystem that we're living in. We all live here as well. And so we want to protect where we are. And this is part of it. And rather than trying to wait for different governmental agencies to come and tell us that what we can and can't do, we wanted to get out in front of this and do it ourselves. So it's a proactive response. It's also a response to global competition. This is an initiative that's being done around the world. And wine and sustainability and eco-friendly practices has become very important in the last decade. And it helps improve and strengthen the Long Island Wine District. The Long Island Sustainable Wine Growing Group right now is engaged in a multi-state grant with California, Washington, Oregon, and Idaho to help develop some national responses around the issues of sustainability and come up with some national guidelines as well that can work for everybody. But essentially, this is a very localized program, and these programs that succeed are all looking at the concerns that are right under our feet, right in front of us. And that's very important for them to succeed. Next slide.
If you paid the camera guy a little more, it'd probably be more responsive here, Rich. Hold on.
Well, that bottle of wine is going to waste.
Yeah, I started early. Sorry.
Well, that's okay. I mean,
Wow. It got a, there we go. Go ahead.
oh, okay. And the benefits, and these are benefits that I think are for growers and winemakers, as well as our customers and our neighbors in our community. It's an increased awareness of our natural systems. What are we doing and how is it affecting our surroundings? One of the things that we prohibited in the program is a chemical called imidacloprid, which is very dangerous for bees. And so that was something we wanted to remove for use right away. And this was eight years ago. New York State right now is looking at and debating whether or not to ban this statewide. So things like that are what we're trying to do. Replacing traditional materials with low input materials that have proven success. These are things sometimes that might be brand new. and they're not going to be something that the organic program or biodynamic program would approve of. However, some of these newer materials are safer, biodegrade, are derived from natural materials, however they are synthesized. So we have the ability and flexibility in the program to look at materials like that if they would help us and help us in our mission. It helps growers with record keeping available for future decision making. These all sound like simple things, but when growers know that they're going to be inspected and someone's paying attention, you'd be amazed at how readily available they can be for looking over their records and working together to make the right decisions. Many people, who are not in the program may not do that. We'll wind up with healthier vineyards and healthier communities, and in my opinion, higher quality grapes and higher quality wines. It's a way for us to showcase what we do here on the East End. I mentioned this earlier for social equity. I think I already talked about it. We were partnering with these different organizations, including Programa Sueños, which was and is a 501c3 that is helping to build schools in Guatemala. The Guatemalan community on the North Fork is large and important, and very important to the vineyards and the work that they do in the vineyards for us. So we try to reach out and be supportive and help where we can. So the third-party certification process is members are visited in years 1 and 2, and then every third year thereafter. The inspection and records are reviewed annually. The practices are laid out in the workbook. All of this is online, and anybody listening in or anybody at all can go look at what those practices are. It is all transparent and free for everybody to view. The inspector will review inputs and future plans and gives a report to the group core committee for certification. And I mentioned this before, 23 members, 20 certified members. Some folks don't make it the first year, so they are in transition. 1,150 acres, which is about 50% of the current acreage on the North Fork and South Fork of Long Island. And that's our seal. If you see this on the bottle of a Long Island wine, you know that they are in the program and that they have gone through some work to get through it and are paying attention to their surroundings and their product. And so we feel like this is an important aspect to consumers who are looking for eco-friendly practices in their wine and can make a decision when they're purchasing a product based on this. So I'm happy to take any questions. I know we have one more speaker, so thank you at all. And thank you for
very
listening.
much, Rich.